The screens flashed blood red. In the most secure building in the city, Aperture Dynamics, a billion-dollar deal was evaporating into thin air. CEO Julian Vance, a man who never lost, was watching his empire die. His chief of tech was useless. The boardroom was a tomb, and a ransom note from a digital ghost was the only thing on the monitor. Then, the door opened. It wasn't security. It wasn't a consultant. It was a waitress pushing a coffee cart, and she was about to change everything. The air in the Aegis room was worth more than most people's homes, filtered to 99.9% purity. But on this Tuesday night, it was thick with the metallic tang of panic. The Aegis room was Julian Vance's fortress. Located on the 80th floor of the Aperture Dynamics Tower, it had no windows. Its walls were solid slabs of smart glass, currently displaying a catastrophic, unified message, a flashing red icon of a broken shield. The company's logo, Julian Vance, CEO and founder, looked like a man carved from granite usually. Tonight, the granite was cracking. Status, Marcus. Now. Marcus Thorne, the chief technology officer, was sweating through his $2,000 bespoke shirt. He stabbed at his tablet, his fingers slipping on the glass. It's a total lockout, Julian. They're not just in the system. They are the system. They've overridden the core protocols. Which they? Julian's voice was a low growl. He didn't build a $40 billion cybersecurity firm by suffering fools, and Marcus was sounding exceptionally foolish. We don't know, Marcus whispered, the confession hanging in the sterile air. On the main wall display, the company's Prometheus AI security system, their flagship product, the very reason the mighty Voltaic Group was set to acquire them in less than 24 hours, was offline. In its place was a simple, black terminal window. A single line of text had just appeared, an ethereal green against the void. We tried to warn you. You didn't listen. Is that a ransom note? Asked a nervous board member, a woman named Eleanor. Are they demanding money? It's worse, Julian said, his eyes fixed on the screen. The text was a puzzle piece he couldn't place. It felt personal. They're not demanding anything. They're bragging. The Prometheus system wasn't just a product. It was Aperture's central nervous system. It controlled their data, their patents, their client lists, and the security for hundreds of other Fortune 500 companies. And it was now a brick. The Voltaic deal, Julian said, not looking at anyone. The acquisition closes in 14 hours. Our entire valuation is based on the infallibility of Prometheus. If they get wind of this, they already know, Marcus said, his voice trembling as a new email notification popped up on his panicked screen. It was from the acquisition team at Voltaic Group. They're citing a material adverse change clause. They're pausing the deal, pending a full security audit. An audit? Julian laughed, a harsh, dry sound. They'll find a smoking crater. We'll be sued into oblivion before the sun comes up. Get it back, Marcus. I don't care what it takes. Bribe them, pay the ransom. Cut the hard lines to the building. We can't, Marcus finally yelled, his professional mask shattering. There's nothing to cut. The attack isn't coming from outside. It's a zero-day exploit. It's a ghost in the kernel. It's something native. It's a chimera. Julian stared at him. A what? A chimera protocol, a recursive ghost key. It's theoretical. It's impossible. No one should know how to build that. As Marcus babbled, the green text on the main screen blinked and added a new line. You fired the only person who could help you. P.S. We know you're thirsty. What the hell does that mean? Eleanor asked. Thirsty? Is this a joke? Julian slammed his fist on the polished obsidian table. The impact dislodged nothing, but the shock of it silenced the room. Get me a full diagnostic. I want a list of every employee, current and former, who had access to the Prometheus source code in the last 3 years. And someone, he barked, rubbing his temples. For God's sake, get me a coffee. A black coffee. It's going to be the longest night of our lives. The order was rhetorical, a venting of steam. The executive assistant outside had already been dismissed. The 80th floor staff sent home hours ago as the executive team prepared for the final, celebratory acquisition meeting. The Aegis room was on full lockdown. No one was getting in or out. Or so they thought. 3 miles away, Linda Hayes was wiping down the chrome espresso machine at the Daily Grind, a cafe that was anything but. The grind was real, but the daily was a special kind of hell. Linda was 28, but some days she felt 80. She had a mind that could, and had, designed recursive algorithms in her sleep, a mind that had once been courted by the biggest tech firms in the world. Now she used that mind to calculate the precise foam-to-liquid ratio for a dozen different kinds of lattes. Big order came in, Linda. Sal, the owner, called from the back. Sal was a kind man who wore food-stained aprons and worried about her. Emergency order. Aperture Tower, top floor. They want the Executive Savior package. Linda froze, her hand still holding the damp rag. Aperture. The name was a cold stone in her stomach. She hadn't set foot near that building in 2 years. Not since the day they had security walk her out, her personal items in a cardboard box, her reputation in ashes. That's a lot, Sal, she said, her voice quiet. The Executive Savior was a joke they'd invented. 6 air pots of coffee, 4 dozen mixed pastries, and a basket of energy drinks. It's almost midnight. Who's working that late? Billionaires, honey, Sal chuckled, loading the insulated bags. Their system probably needs a reboot. Here, I'll help you load the cart. Linda's hands were shaking as she screwed the lid on the midnight black roast. She had designed the original security protocols for the Aperture Building's access system. She knew its flaws. She also knew the flaws in Prometheus. She'd found them. She remembered the report she'd filed, Project Ghost. It was a hypothetical attack, a thought experiment, a chimera protocol, she'd called it, a malicious code that could wear the system's own security signature like a mask, allowing it to walk right through the front door, lock it from the inside, and become the new owner. She had presented it to her direct manager, Marcus Thorne. He had laughed at her. "This is chicken little nonsense, Hayes," he'd said, tossing her 40-page report onto his desk. "Your job is to patch UI bugs, not invent fantasy doomsday scenarios. Stop chasing ghosts." She hadn't stopped. She'd escalated it. 2 days later, she was called into HR for creating a disruptive and paranoid work environment. A week after that, she was fired for insubordination. Now, 2 years later, she was a waitress, her brilliance reduced to sketching complex data structures on the back of order napkins, which Sal mistook for pretty doodles. She pushed the heavy rolling cart out into the damp night air. The Aperture Tower loomed over the city, a monument to the man who had signed off on her dismissal. Julian Vance. He probably didn't even know her name. She arrived at the glittering lobby. The security desk, usually manned by 3 stone-faced guards, was empty. A single, flustered-looking man in a wrinkled suit was yelling into his phone, "I don't care! The keycards are all dead! Just prop the main doors." The main security system. It was down. Linda felt a chill that had nothing to do with the late-night air. No one, not even a janitor, should be able to get past that lobby desk. She pushed her cart past the flustered man, who didn't even look at her. He just waved a hand. Yeah, catering, go on up. Use the service elevator, if it's even working." It wasn't. But the main executive elevator, A glass and steel rocket reserved for Vance and his chosen few was wide open, its system offline and its doors permanently ajar. She rolled the cart in, hit the button for 80, and felt a strange, terrifying sense of dread. The building was dead. The systems she knew were offline. It's not a fantasy, she thought, as the elevator began a slow, grinding ascent. The ghosts are real, and they're in the machine. The 80th floor was silent, but it was a loud silence, the kind that comes after a bomb has gone off. The lights were on, but they were the flat, unflattering emergency lights. The smart glass walls of the hallway were blank, their usual placid blue and white aperture branding gone. Linda pushed the cart over the plush, offensively expensive carpet. She could hear the voices now, leaking from the heavy steel door of the Aegis room. It was ajar. That more than anything told her something was fundamentally broken. The Aegis room was designed to be a vault. It never, ever stood open. She heard a man's voice, sharp with rage. "Sued into oblivion!" She heard another, trembling. "It's impossible, I tell you. Theoretical." She hesitated. This was not her problem. This was the problem of the people who had crushed her. Her job was to drop off the coffee, collect the signature, and go back to her life of wiping counters. She pushed the cart to the door and nudged it open with her hip. "Excuse me," she said, her voice practiced, professional, and entirely dead. "I have the executive savior package." The scene that greeted her was apocalyptic in a sterile, corporate way. 6 people, the most powerful executives in the city, were scattered around an obsidian table. They looked like statues in a museum that had just survived an earthquake. Julian Vance was standing, white-knuckled, glaring at the main wall. Marcus Thorne was pale and visibly shaking. And on the wall, the message, "You fired the only person who could help you. P.S. We know you're thirsty." No one looked at her. Julian Vance just waved a dismissive hand, his eyes glued to the screen. "Leave it. Just leave it and go. We're busy." "Julian, look!" Marcus Thorne suddenly shrieked. He wasn't looking at Linda. He was looking at a diagnostic panel on a smaller screen. A cascade of error logs was scrolling by at an unreadable speed. It's trying to purge the archives. It's not a ransom. It's a deletion. A total system-wide deletion. The room's panic spiked. Linda, however, was frozen. Her eyes weren't on the executives. They were on that small diagnostic screen. The error logs weren't meaningless to her. They were a language she had written. She saw the lines of code, the corrupted strings, the signature. She took a step forward, leaving the cart behind. Her voice was just a breath. "It's not a deletion. It's a replication. It's creating a mirror image data tomb." Everyone in the room stopped. Every head snapped in her direction. "What?" Julian Vance said, finally turning to look at her. His eyes met hers. There was no recognition. He just saw a waitress, 20-something, in a cheap black polo shirt with "The Daily Grind" embroidered on it, and a coffee-stained apron. Marcus Thorne, however, had gone paler than the emergency lights. His mouth opened and closed, like a fish. He did recognize her. "It's a chimera," Linda said, her voice stronger now. She was talking to herself as much as to them, the pieces clicking into place. "You're not being hacked. You're being possessed. The code isn't just in the system. It's mimicking the Prometheus kernel signature. It's using the ghost protocol I warned you about." Silence. Julian's eyes narrowed. He looked from Linda's face, suddenly sharp and intensely focused, to Marcus, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. "Ghost protocol," Julian repeated, the words tasting like ash. He looked back at the main screen. "We tried to warn you." He looked at Marcus. "Marcus, who is this?" She's nobody, Julian," Marcus stammered, taking a step back. She's the caterer. Get her out of here. Security." "Security is offline, Mr. Thorne," Linda said, her voice suddenly ice-cold. She pointed at the diagnostic screen. "Just like your primary firewall. You've got a recursive loop in stack 3. The system isn't just locked, it's listening to you panic. And the more you try to fix it with your standard admin keys, the deeper the chimera digs. You're just making it stronger." "You!" Marcus finally exploded, pointing a shaking finger. "This is you. You're the hacker. You're Ghost." Julian Vance looked at the waitress. He looked at his terrified CTO. And he looked at the nameplate on her shirt, half hidden by the apron. Linda. His mind raced back 2 years, a report, a termination, a disgruntled junior analyst. "Hayes," Julian breathed. The name was a thunderclap in the silent room. "Linda Hayes, the Ghost report. You're Linda Hayes." The waitress in the coffee-stained apron met the billionaire's gaze. "And you," she said, "are in a lot of trouble, Mr. Vance." The revelation hung in the air, heavier and more toxic than the CO2 building up in the sealed room. Linda Hayes. The name echoed in Julian's memory. It was attached to a file, a termination summary he had rubber-stamped without a second thought. "Insubordinate, disruptive, paranoid," Marcus had written. "Obsessed with a theoretical, non-existent vulnerability." "You," Julian started, his voice a low growl of dawning comprehension. "You wrote the Ghost report." "I did," Linda said. She walked past the obsidian table, past the stunned, silent board members. She stood in front of the main diagnostic screen, her reflection a pale ghost in the glass. "I wrote it. I designed the Chimera attack simulation. I found the flaw in the Prometheus kernel. I told him," she pointed a thumb at Marcus, "that a hostile actor could use it to create a perfect, undetectable system mimic." "She's lying!" Marcus shrieked, finding his voice. "She's unstable. Julian, she had a breakdown. We had to let her go. She was obsessed. This is her. She's the hacker. She's Ghost. She's been planning this for 2 years. Revenge." "Revenge?" Linda turned. For the first time, a spark of fiery anger lit her eyes. "You call this revenge, Marcus? I've spent the last 2 years steaming milk for hipsters. I'm making $40 an hour. If I wanted revenge, Mr. Vance, you would have known about it 2 years ago." She turned back to the screen. "This isn't revenge. This is sloppy. This is someone else using my playbook. Someone who read my report. Someone who knew the vulnerability was real and did nothing." Her eyes flicked to Marcus. "Someone who was too arrogant, too lazy, or too stupid to fix it." "That's enough!" Julian snapped. The power dynamics in the room had shattered, and he was fighting to regain control. "Ms. Hayes, you are in a secure area, in the middle of a catastrophic security breach which you apparently predicted. You will give me a straight answer. Are you Ghost?" Linda laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound. "No, I'm not Ghost. I'm the one who warned you about them. Ghost is the name of the project I created to stop this. The hacker," she pointed to the screen. "They're just a fan." "Then fix it," Julian commanded. Linda didn't move. "Fix it." She repeated the words, tasting them. "Just like that. You fired me, Marcus. You blacklisted me. You told the entire industry I was unreliable. I lost my apartment. I lost my career. And now you want me to fix it?" "This is not the time, Ms. Hayes," yelled Eleanor, the board member. "It is exactly the time," Linda shot back. "You don't get it, do you? You're not being held for ransom. This isn't about money. This is about destruction. The Voltic deal? The hacker knows. They timed this. They're triggering a Persephone's Gate protocol. Marcus, who had been silent, went sheet white. Persephone's Gate? That's not possible. What is that? Julian demanded. It's the data tomb, Linda explained, her voice grim. It's a logic bomb. The system isn't just copying your data, it's copying it to a hidden, encrypted partition. She checked a diagnostic clock in the corner of the code. In exactly 60 minutes, that partition will self-corrupt, and the Chimera will merge the corrupted data with your primary archives. Everything. Your patents, your client data, your backups. It will all be irreversibly, permanently, unrecoverably gone, not deleted, poisoned. You won't just be bankrupt. You'll be a toxic asset. The room seemed to tilt. A 60-minute countdown. How do we stop it? Julian asked, his voice barely a whisper. You don't, Linda said. The system sees the Chimera as itself. It's an autoimmune disease. Any attempt to stop the Persephone merge will be interpreted as a critical error, and the system will fry the hard drives. Fail-safe. So we're finished, Eleanor whispered, sinking into a chair. Not we, Linda said. She looked at Marcus. He is. She turned to Julian. I'm the only one who knows the Chimera's architecture. I'm the only one who built a back door into the ghost simulation. A kill switch. I'm the only person on this planet who can stop this. Julian Vance stared at the waitress. The savior of his $40 billion empire wasn't a team of experts. It was a single, slight woman in a stained apron who he had personally allowed to be thrown away like trash. What do you want? Julian asked. The question was heavy with meaning. Linda met his gaze. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This was her moment. This was the transaction. She began. I want his job. The silence that followed Linda's statement was so profound. The hum of the emergency light sounded like a roar. Marcus Thorne let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Julian, she's serving coffee. She's blackmailing you. This is insane. 58 minutes, Mr. Vance, Linda said, ignoring Marcus completely. Her eyes were locked on the CEO. That's the countdown. Is it insane, or is it the only sane option left on the table? Julian looked at Marcus. He saw a man who was now completely, utterly useless. A man who had either, through incompetence, allowed this to happen, or... A darker thought began to form in Julian's mind. You told me her report was theoretical nonsense, Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet, directed at Marcus. You told me she was disgruntled. You never told me she invented the attack. I didn't think it was real, Marcus protested. It was just code, lines on a screen. Which you're paid 7 figures a year to understand, Julian roared. He turned back to Linda. His face was a mask of cold calculation. His job, Chief Technology Officer. That's right, Linda said. Full title, full salary, full authority. And, she added, full legal immunity for my unauthorized presence here tonight. And if I say yes? Julian asked. I'll sit down at that terminal, she pointed to Marcus's abandoned workstation, and I will surgically remove the Chimera from your system. I'll save the data, I'll save the company, and I'll save your deal with Voltic. And if I say no? Linda shrugged, a small, terrifyingly casual gesture. Then I'll take a coffee for the road, go back to my apartment, and watch the 11 o'clock news to see when the Aperture Tower starts liquidating its assets. You have 57 minutes. Julian Vance was a man of calculated risks. He had built his company by betting on the right people and the right tech. Right now, all his tech was failing, and all his people were useless. All except one. "Marcus," Julian said, not looking at him. "Julian, no, please. Marcus, you are suspended. Effective immediately, pending a full investigation into this breach. Give her your security credentials." I can't. They're locked." "Of course they are," Linda sighed. She walked to the terminal. "It doesn't matter." She looked at the keyboard, a complex, ergonomic nightmare. "I'll get in." "Security!" Julian barked into the room's intercom, which was, miraculously, on a separate analog system. A moment later, 2 armed guards, who had been stuck on the floor, burst in. "Sir, the systems are—" "I'm aware," Julian cut them off. "Escort Mr. Thorne to the 79th floor lounge, and keep him there. He is not to touch any electronics. He is not to speak to anyone. Am I clear?" Marcus looked at Julian, his face a mask of betrayal and terror. "Julian, you can't trust her. She'll destroy everything." "You already did, Marcus," Julian said, his voice flat. "Get him out." The guards, confused but obedient, flanked Marcus and hauled him, sputtering and protesting, out of the Aegis room. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing them inside. The room was silent again. Just Julian, Linda, and the 2 stunned board members. And the clock. 56:42. Linda stood before the CTO's terminal. She looked down at her hands, stained with coffee grounds and dish soap. She untied the strings of her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the obsidian table. Then she sat down in the $4,000 ergonomic chair. "All right," Linda Hayes said, cracking her knuckles. "Let's see what this ghost has been up to." She placed her fingers on the keyboard. She didn't have Marcus's credentials. It didn't matter. She bypassed the admin login in less than 4 seconds, using a root-level exploit she herself had patched, and then unpatched in her original simulation. The screen flashed, granting her access. "I'm in," she said. "Now, Mr. Vance. Stay out of my way." The 45 minutes that followed were not a simple fix. They were a war, fought in a language of light, logic, and pure mathematics. Julian Vance and the 2 remaining board members stood like statues of salt, hostages in their own $50 million fortress. They watched the woman they had dismissed as a coffee server, a nobody, become the sole defender of their entire legacy. Linda, for her part, was no longer in the room. Her body was, but her mind was deep inside the architecture of aperture dynamics. The scent of stale air and the faint, panicked breathing of the executives faded away. All she could see, all that was real, was the code. And it was a battlefield. She had bypassed Marcus's locked-out credentials in seconds, not by guessing his password, but by using a root-level exploit she had invented. A developer's back door she'd built into the system's diagnostic tools, a key she had never told anyone about. The system she found was not just locked, it was bleeding. The Chimera Protocol, her Chimera Protocol, was a thing of terrible, twisted beauty. Marcus hadn't just used her theory, he had weaponized it, but with all the finesse of a butcher. Where her design was meant to be a scalpel, his was a sledgehammer. The code was alive, a malignant, oil-slick shadow that had wrapped itself around the core kernel. It was aware. "Okay, Marcus," she whispered to herself, her fingers blurring across the keys, opening 5, 6, 7 terminal windows. "You wanted to play with Ghost. Let's see you haunt." Her first move wasn't to attack. It was to triage. The Persephone's Gate, the Data Tomb Protocol, was the primary threat. It was a 60-minute countdown. The clock on the wall now showed 54.8. She began writing code, a fresh script, a new program, in a small, isolated window. She was building her weapon. Suddenly, a new window forced itself open on her main screen. It was black, with the same ethereal green text. Ghost. Who is this? A new player. Ghost. Get out. You're too late. Julian saw the message. Is that them? Are you talking to them? He sees me, Linda said, her voice tight, never looking away. He knows I'm not a standard admin. She ignored the taunt. She continued to write her Cerberus script. Her fingers were a blur. She was building a three-headed digital watchdog designed to hook into the Chimera's primary functions. The hacker, Ghost, was clearly agitated. The system's activity logs, which only she was watching, lit up. He was trying to find her. He was attempting to trace her login, but he was tracing a shadow. She wasn't logged in a conventional way. She was native to the system's core. Ghost. I see you. You're in the old dev kernel. Ghost. Clever. But you're just a rat in a trap you don't understand. He's arrogant, Linda murmured, and he's sloppy. What do you mean? Julian asked, desperate for any scrap of information. He's talking too much, Linda said. He's giving himself away. Furious at being ignored, the hacker launched a new attack. A new countdown timer appeared, this one bright, flashing, and terrifying. System archive purge. In 5 hour, 40:59, 4:58. Eleanor, the board member, let out a small scream. My God, Linda, it's deleting the archives. Do something. Julian's hand shot out. Stop it, Ms. Hayes. Linda's hands didn't even pause in their typing on her other window. No. What do you mean, no? Julian roared. It's a fake, Linda snapped, her concentration finally breaking for 1 second of pure, unadulterated frustration. It's a logic bomb, but it's not aimed at the archives. It's aimed at me. It's a distraction. He's trying to make me panic. He wants me to chase this, to try and stop it. So I'll stop what I'm really doing. Don't look at it. The 5-minute timer was a lie, a digital scarecrow. The real timer, the Persephone's gate, was the one that mattered. It now showed 48:31. The hacker was incensed. This new player wasn't falling for his tricks. The taunts became more personal. Ghost. I know who you are. Ghost. They called you Hayes, didn't they? The girl who cried, Ghost. Ghost. You're the one they threw away, and you came back. Ghost. Came back to finish the job? Or to save the masters who whipped you? Linda's hand stopped. Just for a second. He knew. He hadn't just stolen her protocol. He had read her file. He knew her name. This wasn't just an attack on the company. This was an attack on her. He's in Marcus's files, she murmured, a cold, hard realization dawning. He's read the termination report. He's framing you, Julian whispered, the pieces clicking together for him, too. He's not just a hacker. He's an assassin, and you're his alibi. Linda's anger, suppressed for 2 years, finally coalesced into a single, diamond-hard point of focus. He thinks he's a ghost, she said, her voice dropping to an icy calm. He doesn't realize I'm the one who wrote the book on haunting. Her fingers returned to the keyboard. The Cerberus script was finished. What is that? Julian asked, pointing to the new untested code. The Ghost protocol was a simulation of an attack, Linda explained, her voice a low, intense monotone. I'm a thorough analyst. I also built the defense. Cerberus. It's not a watchdog, it's a leash. It's not designed to kill the Chimera. That would be impossible, it's too integrated. It's designed to tame it. It uses the Chimera's own mimicry against it, forcing it into a recursive, contained loop. Execute it, Julian commanded. I am. She hit the enter key. For a moment, nothing happened. The timers, both the real and the fake one, continued to tick down. The screen was a chaotic mess of text. Then, Ghost sent one last message. Ghost, you think your little script can stop me? You're a waitress. I am a god. The message cut off. A new window, a brilliant, placid blue, bloomed in the center of the screen. Linda's Cerberus code, a beautiful, complex matrix, began to envelop the red, malignant chimera code. It wasn't a fight, it was an absorption. On the main screen, the 46-minute countdown clock for Persephone's Gate stuttered. It flickered, 46:01, 46:00, 45:59. Then it flashed, stasis. The 5-minute fake timer simply vanished. The room was silent. It's stopped? Eleanor breathed. Temporarily, Linda said, already working again. I've trapped the Persephone's Gate in a logic fold. It's trying to execute and purge at the same instant, so it's doing neither. It's frozen. Now, her face was grim. For the hacker, Ghost, was now in a panic. He was no longer a taunting god. He was just a man. He was trapped inside the system with her. He began to fight back, launching brute force attacks, trying to sever her connection, trying to force the Persephone clock to resume. He's trying to find the kill switch, Linda narrated, her fingers flying once more. But I didn't build a kill switch. I built a trace. He thinks he's attacking the system, but he's just telling me exactly where he is. A new window opened, a trace route. It bounced from servers in Eastern Europe to Asia to shell corporations in the Caribbean, back to North America. Ghost, you can't find me. I'm everywhere. I'm anonymous. He's not anonymous, Linda scoffed, running a new program. He's just an amateur with a proxy list. He's bouncing his connection, but he's made one fatal, arrogant mistake. What? Julian asked, leaning in. He's still in the house, Linda said. To control the chimera, he has to be inside our firewall. He's routing his connection through the very aperture servers he's attacking. He thinks the chimera's invisibility is protecting him. She hit a new command. But the flaw in the chimera, Linda said, her voice dropping, is that it's a perfect mimic. It mimics everything, including the system's own diagnostic logs. He's been screaming his IP address into the server's event logs for the last 3 hours, and he's too stupid to even know it. She wasn't running a trace. She was just looking. She opened the raw event log for the executive server. It was a waterfall of text, but Linda's eyes scanned it, and she found the one string that didn't belong, the one persistent local IP address that was pinging the Persephone protocol over and over. There, she whispered. It's not in Russia. It's not in China. Her blood ran cold. It's internal, she said, her voice barely audible. It's on our executive network. It's on this floor. What? Julian barked. Who? One of the board? Who is it? Linda's fingers trembled just slightly as she ran one final command, cross-referencing the IP address with the building's hardware assignment list. The result was instant, and it was damning. IP address 1080.0.2, assigned to M. Thorne Desk Encrypted Server. The room seemed to tilt. That's, Eleanor whispered. It's Marcus Thorne's terminal, Linda said, the pieces fitting together with sickening clarity. The one I'm sitting at. Julian's face was a mask of thunder. But he's outside. The guards have him. How? Linda's eyes were no longer on the screen. They were scanning the desk, the keyboard, the tower. Her gaze went to the underside of the polished obsidian. She dropped from the chair onto her hands and knees. Miss Hayes, what are you? Her fingers felt along the cold wood, past the neat cable management ties, until they hit something small, plastic, and held on with double-sided tape. Click! She ripped the small black USB device from under the desk. A tiny blinking green antenna on it went dark. She stood up, holding it in her palm. "A wireless failsafe," she said, her voice hollow. "A remote trigger. He was never locked out. He was in this room with his finger on the button. He must have triggered the final lockout when he was dragged out. He was going to let us all fry in here." The full, monstrous picture was complete. "He used my report," Linda said, looking at Julian, her eyes filled with a terrible cold fire. "He knew the Voltic audit would find the flaw I warned him about. He'd be fired. So he decided to burn the company to the ground instead." She held up the USB drive. "And he was going to make it look like I did it. The ghost. The disgruntled ex-employee who finally got her revenge." She looked at the coffee cart she had wheeled in a lifetime ago. "It was the perfect plan," she said. "He just didn't count on one thing." Julian Vance, his entire world remade in the last hour, stared at her. "What's that?" "He didn't count on you ordering coffee." The countdown clock was frozen. The digital screaming of the alarms had ceased. The only sound in the Aegis room was the unsteady breathing of its occupants. On the main screen, the aggressive, flashing red shield icon was gone, replaced by a complex, multi-windowed display of Linda's code. The Cerberus program, represented by a simple, three-headed dog icon, pulsed with a steady, placid blue light. It had the Chimera in a digital cage. The IP address of the traitor, M. Thorne Desk Encrypted Server, was still burning on the diagnostic panel, an indictment in glowing green text. Julian Vance stared at it. His face, which had been a mask of panic and then fury, settled into a terrifying calm. He had built his empire on one simple principle: absolute control. That control had been ripped from him, not by a foreign agent or a shadowy collective, an anonymous or a ghost in the ether, but by the man he had trusted for a decade, the man he had paid millions. Eleanor, the board member, finally found her voice, a reedy whisper. Marcus? But why? He had everything. He was set to make a 9-figure bonus from this acquisition. Linda finally leaned back from the terminal, the physical tension draining from her shoulders. She was exhausted, her mind running on the fumes of adrenaline and 2 years of suppressed rage. "It's always ego, Mom," she said, not turning around. He knew the Voltic Group's audit would be deep, deeper than ours. They wouldn't just check the locks, they'd X-ray the foundations. They would have found the ghost vulnerability. "The flaw," I reported. She finally swiveled the $4,000 chair to face them. She looked like a general after a battle, weary but victorious. They would have seen he ignored it. He'd be exposed as incompetent. He'd be fired, disgraced. He'd lose his golden parachute. He'd be a joke. So, she gestured to the quiet screens. He decided to be a villain instead. He'd burn the company to the ground, make it look like an impossible external attack, and blame the one person who could have done it, the disgruntled ex-employee he'd already set up as paranoid and unstable. He was going to frame me. He was going to frame you, Julian repeated, the words tasting like acid. He looked at the USB drive Linda had pulled from under the desk, now sitting on the obsidian table like a dead cockroach. He would have let us all go down, just to save his own skin. Julian looked at the door. His fury was now a white-hot, focused beam. He's just outside, in the 79th floor lounge, thinking he's a victim. He pressed the analog intercom. Security. "Sir," the same voice, now sounding much more stable. "Bring Mr. Thorne back to the Aegis room. Now." "Sir, he's highly agitated," the guard's voice crackled. "I don't care if you have to carry him," Julian growled. "Bring him here." A minute later, the heavy door hissed open. The two guards shoved Marcus Thorne inside. His bespoke jacket was torn, his $500 silk tie askew. He had been crying. The second he saw Linda sitting in his chair, his snivelling fear evaporated, replaced by a venomous hatred. "You!" he spat, lunging forward before the guards caught his arms. "You bitch! You did this! This was all you!" "Quiet," Julian commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through Marcus's hysteria like a razor. "Julian, she's the hacker!" Marcus pleaded, his eyes wild. "She came in here with her coffee. She planted that thing." He pointed at the USB drive. "She's been planning this. Tell him, Eleanor. She's—" "Quiet," Julian said again. He walked calmly to the diagnostic screen and pointed. "Is this your IP, Marcus?" Marcus froze. His eyes darted to the screen, and the blood drained from his face. The M. Thorne desk-encrypted server was an irrefutable digital fingerprint. He knew it. Linda knew it. And Julian, in that terrible dawning moment, knew it too. You can't prove that," Marcus stammered, his last pathetic defense. Linda spoke, her voice calm and cold as a tomb. "I don't have to. You did. You used my ghost protocol, but you weren't smart enough to understand it. You thought you were invisible, but you were just a child playing in an attic, screaming at the top of your lungs. The Chimera, by design, mimics every system protocol, including diagnostic logging. Every command you typed, every file you corrupted. You were logging it all to a hidden partition. A partition I'm currently downloading. The entire confession, with timestamps. You didn't just leave a fingerprint, Marcus. You left a signed, notarized confession." She hit a final Enter key. A new folder labeled E. Thorne. Confession logs appeared on the desktop. Marcus Thorne visibly collapsed, the fight leaving him all at once. The guards held up a man who was, for all intents and purposes, a dead-weighing sack of expensive clothes. You were just a waitress," he whispered, a question and a curse. "You were supposed to be nothing." "I was never nothing," Linda said, standing up from the chair. "I was just waiting. You, on the other hand, are less than nothing." Julian Vance nodded to the guards. "Get him out of my sight. Don't take him to the lounge. Take him to the lobby. The police will be here in 5 minutes. I want them to arrest him in front of the world. Give them that." He pointed to the USB drive. "And that," he pointed to the screen. "Tell them to call our legal department. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy. Tell them to throw the book at him." The guards hauled the catatonic Marcus out of the room. The door sealed, and the silence, this time, was one of profound, agonizing reality. The crisis was over. The problem was just beginning. Eleanor was the first to speak. "My God, Julian, what do we do? The deal. Voltic. They're set to call in." She checked her watch. 3 hours. When they hear about this, when they find out our system was compromised, it's over. We're finished. They'll cite the material adverse change clause, and we'll be radioactive. Julian looked at the screen. The Chimera was caged, but it was still there. The data was safe, but the vulnerability had been proven. He looked at the 2 other board members, who were silent and grey-faced. His entire executive team had failed him. He turned his gaze to the only person in the room who hadn't. "Ms. Hayes?" he asked. The question was simple. What now? The power in the room had shifted. Definitively. It no longer sat at the head of the obsidian table. It sat in the CTO's chair, where a woman in a coffee-stained polo shirt was calmly sipping from a cup of cold, sludgy coffee she'd poured from her own cart. Linda took a slow sip, winced at the taste, and set the cup down. "You're all thinking like victims," she said. "You're thinking, we were attacked. We were compromised. We are weak. You're wrong. She stood and walked to the main wall screen, which was now just a placid blue logo. Here is what happened. Aperture Dynamics, in our constant pursuit of perfection, discovered a new class of zero-day exploit. A theoretical threat. We called it the Chimera Protocol. Our former CTO, she said the word with surgical precision, was tasked with leading a white hat simulation to test our defenses. He did. She turned to face them, her eyes electric. And our system worked. The Prometheus AI detected the impossible attack. It initiated the Persephone's Gate failsafe to protect the data, and our new cutting-edge counter-protocol, Cerberus, successfully neutralized the threat. The test was a complete, unqualified success. Julian Vance stared at her. A slow, dangerous smile began to spread across his face. A test. A stress test, Linda confirmed. The most successful in cybersecurity history. We didn't just survive an attack no one else on Earth knows exists. We tamed it. The Chimera is still in the kernel, yes. It's a part of the system now. We can't delete it. So, she clicked a key, and a complex diagram filled the screen. We don't. We integrate it. We neuter its hostile code and turn its mimicry protocol into a new kind of diagnostic tool. We turn the ghost into a guardian, an adaptive, internal defense that mimics any new threat and learns how to kill it before it can even act. She pointed to the diagram. We're not just selling Voltic a shield anymore, Mr. Vance. We're selling them the shield and the sword. We're selling them Prometheus, and we're giving them Cerberus. Our valuation didn't just hold, it just doubled. The room was silent. Julian Vance was looking at her not as a waitress, not as an analyst, but as a queen who had just checkmated the entire board. That's brilliant, Eleanor whispered, her eyes wide. It's the most incredible spin I've ever heard. It's not spin, Linda said. It's just the truth, told from the winner's perspective. Marcus was a hostile actor. The system beat him. I just helped. Julian began to laugh. It was a real, deep, barking laugh of pure, unadulterated relief and admiration. A new CTO indeed. Ms. Hayes, we had an agreement. Linda walked back to the coffee cart, her posture radiating an authority that had nothing to do with her uniform. We had an ultimatum, Mr. Vance. I was desperate. Now, she turned, I'm in charge, so we'll have a negotiation. Julian's smile didn't fade. He respected this. This was his language. Name your terms. 1, Linda said, ticking a finger. The title. Chief Technology Officer. Not acting, not interim. Chief. Effective immediately. Done, Julian said. 2, the salary. I want Marcus's full salary. Done. Doubled, Linda said, without blinking. As a signing bonus, along with a back pay package for 2 years of lost wages at that rate, for wrongful termination and emotional distress. One of the board members choked. Julian just nodded. Aggressive, but fair. Done. 3. I want a 10% stake in the Cerberus protocol as a separate intellectual property. It's my code. My name is on it. Aperture can license it, but I own the patent. This gave Julian pause. This was real money. Billions. That's the part that's non-negotiable, Linda cut him off. You want to sell the Guardian system. The inventor gets her cut. Or I can take my Cerberus code, walk out that door, and sell it to the highest bidder. Maybe Voltic. Julian stared at her for a long, hard 10 seconds. Then he threw his head back and laughed again. Done. My God, done. Eleanor, get legal on the line. I want a letter of intent drafted and on this table before the call with Voltic. I want Ms. Hayes's name on a press release, announcing her as the new CTO and visionary behind the Cerberus defense. Make her a star. And 4? Linda said, her voice a little softer. There's a 4? Julian asked, amused. Linda walked to the cart and poured a fresh cup of the lukewarm coffee. She held it up. My 4th term is that this swill is never, ever served in this building again. My new team is going to be running on high-test fuel, and this is a security risk. Julian looked at the woman who had, in the space of one night, gone from serving coffee to saving his company, firing his CTO, and negotiating a multi-billion-dollar contract. She was right. She was right about everything. I'll have my personal assistant bring up a pot from my private machine, he stammered. Linda smiled, a real, tired smile. Don't bother, she said. She took a deep sip of the terrible coffee. I'm going to need the adrenaline. She turned back to the CTO's station, her station, and sat down. The chair, for the first time, felt like it belonged to her. All right, Mr. Vance, she said, pulling the keyboard toward her. Get your legal team in here. Get my contract done. And then get the Voltic group on a video call. Put it on the main screen. She cracked her knuckles, her eyes already scanning the lines of code, seeing the future, her future. They're about to meet the new boss. And just like that, Linda Hayes went from serving coffee to running the show. She didn't just fix the system, she rewrote the rules. Julian Vance got his deal, the Voltic group got their security patch, and Marcus Thorne got a long, long time to think about what he'd done. It just goes to show, you should never, ever underestimate the person pouring your coffee. They might just be a genius in disguise, waiting for their moment. What did you think of Linda's story? Have you ever felt like you were the smartest person in the room, but no one would listen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you loved this story of drama, twists, and sweet, sweet justice, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss one of our weekly stories. Share this video with a friend who loves a good underdog story. We'll see you in the next one.